I've been shooting with the Fujifilm X-T4 for a few weeks now, and I think I'm finally ready to share some of my thoughts on it. This video is not sponsored by Fujifilm, however they did send me an X-T4 to make a couple of videos and to share my honest thoughts on this channel for you guys. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been able to take the camera on numerous shoots, shooting both photography and video with this camera, and I'm really happy with the results I've been able to get so far. So I can't wait to get into the review, but first I want to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by Skillshare. I've been a member of Skillshare for quite some time now, and it's made a massive impact on my journey as a creative. It's continued to help me to learn principles of photography and filmmaking while also taking me from knowing literally zero about web design to being able to build websites completely on my own. So if you don't already know, Skillshare is an online learning community that offers thousands of inspiring classes for creatives on topics including illustration, design, and most importantly to you guys, photography and video creation. Members get unlimited access to thousands of inspiring classes with hands-on projects and feedback from a community of millions. Stay tuned to the end of this video for a special offer for my subscribers from Skillshare. I've been using Fujifilm cameras since I jumped into the Fuji system way back with the X-T2. The X-T3 was my ideal travel camera. Being lightweight and compact, you could pack a ton of gear into a bag and not be too weighed down. It also had amazing color profiles straight out of camera, which is a massive priority for me. And also the firmware updates that Fujifilm have been coming out with have been drastically improving the cameras step by step. You know, even after 1 or 2 years of owning the X-T3, we're still getting these firmware updates that are improving the performance of the camera. But in 2019, I shifted into making more YouTube videos as well as doing a little bit more photography than video, which saw me move to the EOS R, which I'm filming on right now. And it has a flip around screen, which was amazing for making videos, as well as having the full frame sensor when I'm shooting portraits. I loved having that extra depth of field as well. The other thing I didn't like about the X-T3 was the battery life. I actually owned 12 Fuji batteries for the X-T3, and that was to get me through a full day if I'm shooting a wedding or a commercial gig, to get me through the full day of shooting video. But now the X-T4 has added the flip around screen as well as a much bigger battery, so it's actually solved a lot of the problems that I had with the camera. Honestly, the strength of the video capabilities in this camera make it a really compelling option for videographers. Just having that flip out screen gives you way more options when it comes to shooting on a gimbal. You're not going to be blocked by your roll motor. You can move that to the side and have a lot more flexibility.
Got his new Fuji X-T4.
Look at this!
Dude, got the flip screen
It
and everything.
flips!
That's actually a big game changer.
Crazy.
I like that. That's huge. Alright, let's go shoot some shit.
Alright. So first things first, just holding the X-T4 in my hand, it feels a little bit bigger than the X-T3, definitely a bulkier build overall. In terms of image quality, the photos coming out of the X-T4 look incredible. There's no surprises here as it has the same sensor as the X-T3, which has amazing dynamic range, great shadow recovery, and overall a very sharp and detailed image. At 26 megapixels, it is high resolution enough for what I do. You can crop in quite far and not lose much in terms of resolution. One thing to keep in mind if you're using the X-T4 or any Fuji camera for that matter and you're a Lightroom user, make sure you set your sharpening to 0 when you export the final edited image, and if you want to do some sharpening, do it in Photoshop. This gives you the absolute best results because Lightroom can't effectively sharpen the raw data from the X-Trans sensor because it's a different sensor design from your regular Bayer sensor. Moving on to autofocus. The autofocus seems to be slightly improved on the X-T4, however, I think the performance has a lot to do with the lens that you're using. I was using the 23mm 1.4 lens, which is one of the older lenses in Fuji's lineup, and I didn't get great results with this lens, to be honest. I've used the newer and more advanced 23mm f2 and 35mm f2, and I've got to say that these lenses are far superior, not just in image quality, but in focus speed and accuracy as well. Fuji also sent me the 16 to 80mm f4, which I loved using. It's not my first choice when it comes to a lens, as I would much prefer investing in some of Fuji's other lower f-stop options, which perform better in low light and give you more separation from the background when shooting portraits. But I will say, in terms of autofocus, the 16 to 80mm lens performed really well with the X-T4. One thing that I noticed, which is a massive improvement, is that on the X-T3, when you change the size of the autofocus point, if you make it smaller, then the focus is a little bit less accurate and a lot slower. On the X-T4, when you make that focus point smaller, it seems like the accuracy and the speed are the same as if you had a larger autofocus point, which is really good. It gives you a lot more flexibility when it comes to focusing, because the smaller the point, the more precise you can be with your focusing. The eye autofocus is really snappy, and I think it does a really great job in eye auto of choosing the eye that is closest to the camera. I was able to do a few tests with my friend Amanda, walking towards the camera and then tracking her continuously with the AFC and then firing off bursts of photos. And as you can see, it did a pretty good job. Not perfect. It did lose the face from time to time. I don't think it does as well as the Canon dual pixel autofocus system, but it does a pretty good job overall. I used to avoid using the face tracking on the X-T3, but with the X-T4, I think I would be confident enough to use it for a situation where I had a subject coming towards the camera and I needed to track their face. One of my favorite features on the X-T4 when it comes to autofocus is the wide tracking autofocus option. The reason that I love this is because back when I used to shoot on a DSLR, I would use the center point to focus my image and then recompose. What this feature allows you to do is to acquire focus with that center point, so when you move the camera around and recompose your image, whatever was under that focus point continues to be tracked. The best thing about this method is the camera will continually focus on that point until you press the shutter. This is my favorite focus mode because it ensures that that point in the image will always be in focus. I'm actually sad that I don't have it on my other cameras like my EOS R. In terms of video autofocus performance, I'm seeing a massive improvement with the X-T4. The X-T3 was already pretty good in this regard, and I'm seeing a big improvement in the face tracking in the X-T4 particularly. Now, Fuji still don't have the object tap to track like the Canon dual pixel autofocus system, which is a bit of a bummer. Seeing as you can select a point and track it really well in the photo mode, it makes sense that Fuji would add this to their video features sometime in the future, maybe in the next iteration of cameras, or maybe through firmware, maybe in an X-H2, we'll see. You can move the autofocus point around while you're recording with the joystick, however, it's just not as flexible as being able to tap the screen and then track an object like you can with Canon and Sony cameras. One of the first things that I noticed when picking up the X-T4 and firing off the first few photos was that the shutter was really quiet. It also has a much longer life now, so I think the X-T3 was rated to 150,000 shots, whereas the X-T4 now doubles that, being rated to be able to take 300,000 shots. Of course, if you're worried about the sound, you can always use the completely silent electronic shutter mode, which is literally silent. But electronic shutter can cause rolling shutter effects, so don't use it for fast motion shots. The camera can do up to 15 frames per second in high speed burst with the shutter, which is a big improvement over the X-T3, which only offered 11 frames per second when using mechanical shutter. So if you're shooting fast motion like sports or wildlife, this will definitely help you to capture the perfect moment. I've enjoyed using the X-T3's menu and all the Fuji cameras that I've used so far. It's really straightforward and easy to navigate with either the touchscreen or the joystick controls. They've actually changed the Q menu, which can now appear transparently on the screen. It's completely customizable too, with way more options available than on the X-T3. So simply holding the Q button allows you to quickly customize the Q menu and add whichever feature you'd like. And you can customize different Q menus for both the photo and video modes, which is really nice as well. You can even set how many different options appear in the quick menu, from 4 all the way up to 16 slots. Talking about the in-body stabilization now, it wasn't a surprise to me since I'd owned the X-H1 and that had the IBIS system. So now that the X-T4 has this, I'm really happy because it allows you to get really rock steady shots. And using a lens like the 16 to 80mm, which also has OIS in the lens, these two systems work together to get a really steady shot. To be honest, when it comes to video, I'm not the kind of shooter that expects their in-body image stabilization to keep the camera and the image really steady even while you're walking or running. To me, it's useful if you want to just get a really nice, steady, static shot. If I wanted to do a camera movement, I'd definitely use a gimbal or a slider or something like that. But in terms of stills, I was able to get some really amazing results shooting handheld. I shot down to a quarter of a second, a half a second, I even tried a full second, and you guys can see it makes a huge difference to the sharpness of the image. I was able to get some crazy shots handheld and just letting the stabilization of the sensor and the lens do its work. This battery is actually a really good size now. Fuji also sent me the grip. The camera already is a little bit thicker, a little bit bigger and easier to hold than the X-T3, but when you chuck this grip on, I feel like this grip is even better. Like in terms of the ergonomics, just holding onto the camera, it feels like way more substantial, way more like molded to my hands. Plus it adds 2 more of those massive batteries. So you can see in the grip, 2 more. I just can't even imagine that you would ever run out of batteries in a single day shoot. As I shoot a lot of portraits, I loved having the more comfortable option to shoot in portrait orientation, and I never ran out of battery in the camera, even across multiple days of shooting. The best part is being able to plug in the USB-C cable and charge all 3 batteries at the same time. One downside in terms of the video features is that on the X-T4 they chose to remove the headphone jack. However, you can use the USB-C adapter that comes in the box. The grip also adds a regular headphone port as well. If you're planning on running the camera on USB-C power, the grip will definitely be a good idea because you get that dedicated headphone port. Now, in terms of the video quality, you are going to get the absolute best quality when you're shooting in 4K 25p at 400 megabits per second. And in my opinion, you should go for the H.265 codec, and rather than shooting in the F-Log mode, shoot in the HLG mode. And this applies especially if you want to go to 4K 50 or 4K 60p. In my test for those higher frame rates, and especially in the lower bit rates, there is some splotchiness and macro blocking issues when it comes to skin tone and neutral colors, and the HLG profile seems to iron those out. And this has to do with the limited luma range that F-Log gives you. It just crushes all that information into a smaller space, and the HLG profile actually maps all of those luma values across the entire range. So in my opinion, it's a much better profile. Overall, I'm really impressed with the X-T4, and I definitely see it as a worthy upgrade over the X-T3. I think this is one of the best photo and video hybrid cameras on the market at the moment, if not the best. I would like to see Fuji improve their autofocus tracking. In my opinion, this is the camera's biggest weakness, but Fuji have always improved their cameras via firmware, so I can't wait to see what they do in the future, either with the next iteration or through firmware. For anyone who wants to have a look at some raw files that I shot with the Fuji X-T4, I'll leave a link in the description down below. If you decide to pick up an X-T4 to level up the quality of your production, do not forget to level up your skills as a creative as well. So thanks once again to our sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Because in my opinion, a Skillshare membership is the perfect way to continue learning and developing on your journey to becoming a better artist. The best part is that a subscription to Skillshare is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. I'm also teaming up with Skillshare to give away 2 free months of Skillshare Premium to the first 1,000 subscribers who join through the link in the top of the description. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe because I have plenty more Fujifilm X-T4 content coming up on the channel. Let me know what you guys want to see down in the comments section below, and I'll see you in the next video.